Check, check, check.
Check,
I'm ready.
check, 1 2 1 2. Have you ever heard the story of Cliff Young?
No, but I love the name.
So this is crazy, and it's one of my favorite stories. There's this guy, his name's Cliff Young. This is 1983. He shows up at this ultra marathon race in Australia, and the race was supposed to go from Sydney to Melbourne. The entire race is like 800 kilometers. It's like 540
Holy
miles.
shit.
So it's pretty far. So he shows up there. There's all these people like decked out in ultra endurance gear, sponsored by, the likes of Nike and all
Sure.
these big companies. And Cliff shows up in boots and like a raincoat,
That
and people are looking at him. And at the time, he's 61.
what?
So people are staring at this guy and they're like, "Why are you here? Like, what are you doing here?" And he's like, "I'm here to run the race." And they're
Is this a
like,
joke?
"No." And they're like, "Have you ever ran a race before like this?" He goes, "No, I never ran a race, but I'm a farmer and have a lot of sheep, and I'm usually running around chasing them, and I'm here to run the race." And they just kind of laugh it off. So the race starts and Cliff starts running, and he starts to do this like shuffle, and everyone in the crowd is like just confused more than
Uh-huh.
anything. All the runners take off. Near the end of the first day, he's in last place by a landslide.
Oh, I would imagine. Yeah.
But what happens next is truly incredible. The way you run these races typically, at least the way you ran them in 1983,
Uh-huh.
where you would run for 18 hours and you would sleep for 6.
Okay.
So 18 hours, just thinking about that is insane in itself,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Well, Cliff didn't know that. He was so far behind, he didn't see anyone else going off to take like their
Right.
their rest.
Uh-huh.
So he just kept running through the night. So the next day, this rumor swirls amongst all the runners that a new person emerged as number one, and that's Cliff. So the race continues for 5 days, and he just repeats the same thing 5 days in a row. And this is before the age of, these radios that they're going to tell these runners like there's this
Oh,
guy
right,
and
right,
there's
right.
not a lot of communication to say, "Hey, you better not sleep." He truly did not know that you were supposed to sleep, or this was the protocol,
Right.
and ended up running all 5 days without any sleep. Not only did he win the race, he got a record by 12 hours. And at the end of the race, people were just astonished. And the whole time he did this shuffle that was later coined the Cliff Young shuffle. Like if you Google it, like you'll see he's just shuffling
Uh-huh.
his whole way around, but it turned out to be a really efficient way of running. And come to find out, not only was he herding sheep, but he would have to, during a storm, be up for 3 nights in a row to protect his farm. He was a potato farmer from these sheep. So he'd be herding them and no one knew. Like they just heard he was a farmer, but they didn't understand the training that he
Right,
had
right,
going into
right.
this race, right? Everyone dismissed him because he didn't have like the standard training that one would have going
Right.
into an ultra marathon. The best part of all this is when he won $10,000. He actually donated it back to all the racers in the whole event.
Really?
So it had nothing to do with money. He was 61 years old, wanted to try something, thought he was prepared for it. No one else thought he was. Didn't know what he was doing, didn't have a coach, yet this guy ended up winning the marathon and getting that record.
Wow. I mean, it seems like there's so many different things to take away from that.
When I think about life and business, sometimes you're at the most advantageous stages when you don't know what you don't know. They also say
Yeah.
ignorance is bliss, and that
Yeah.
is true in many facets of life, or especially when you're trying something for the first time and you just feel like there's so much in front of you to overcome that you can't even get started. And when I have those feelings, I think back to that story of Cliff Young, knowing that anything is possible. I know that's a lot of hyperbole, but you have to be ready and you have to be prepared, even if you're the only one that thinks so.
Yeah. Well, and believe in yourself, it seems like most so.
You don't need to look the part. And more importantly than anything, not knowing the rules can be your superpower.
Yeah. The rules and I was going to say expectations, but that's not even it. It's just like,
Norms, like what's everyone
yeah,
doing?
right.
Like I
The customs or the should, right? This is how you should do it.
And if you think about the disruptive companies of our generation, the
Yeah.
generations before, what playbook do they follow? Do they follow the norms? No. The first time Uber was created, you think people thought that was a good idea?
Oh my
Like they were
gosh.
like, you're going to
So
get in a stranger's car.
yeah.
First time Airbnb did a pitch deck, they're like, potential investors said there was no market there,
Yeah.
yet they're creating more revenue than the GDP of most countries.
Even hearing the story now and thinking about it like with Uber or Airbnb, like if you didn't know about those companies, if you didn't know about Cliff, you'd be like, no, that won't work. And it's like, no, it did work.
If you can time travel back to 1982 before that run, and you said, hey, here's my prediction, this guy's going to win it,
Totally.
people would think you're crazy. If you
Yeah.
said, hey, I can see the future of transportation, it's going to be using your phone that didn't exist and connecting with a stranger to get in their car, they would call that hitchhiking.
Yeah.
Yet
And call
it's
it
a huge industry.
Murderers Inc. Like,
Right. You would never think
right.
that, right? So it's this unorthodox approach to everyday things that is so powerful. Yet we have this resistance because we're so used to these norms that society has created and our mindset is so conformed to them. That's hard to break out. But I can tell you from experience that coming into things from a fresh perspective and sometimes not knowing the rules is the biggest advantage you can have.
This might be a weird question, but do you feel like the attitude of, say, Cliff or Uber, Airbnb, like we have a notion of disruptors coming in with kind of like a chip on their shoulder in a way? Like, I'll show you this can be done versus it sounds like with Cliff, he just didn't know any better. It wasn't like he came in with that chip, like, I'm going to show you I can do it, the Cliff Shuffle, and I'm going to win. It was more just like a different psychology that maybe removes inhibition in some way versus like, I'm going to try to break barriers. Like, I didn't see the barriers.
Yeah, I would have loved to talk to him because maybe there was some of that inherent, I'm going to prove it to everyone that I could do
Sure.
this.
Yeah.
It just, on the public record, it wasn't disclosed as much to be able
Yeah.
to tell the story, but I can't imagine there's not some underlying, hey, I'm going to prove it to you that I can do this. And I'm sure as people were laughing at him when he was starting that race, in his mind, he's like, okay, I'm just going to do my thing.
Yeah, Ben, for sure.
I think the advantage, though, that you do have being a small company or being a Cliff who's an unknown, there's no expectation. He has everything to gain and not much to lose except his own internal pride. The opposite of that is once you're large or once you have a track record, you put yourself out there, you can have a lot to lose.
Yeah.
So being young and scrappy and a first-time entrepreneur, I think you have a huge advantage to look at the world in a different way without a lot to lose.
Were there times with, say, DI in particular, maybe with Go, where you shared the idea of what you wanted to do and people in the industry were like, good luck, that's not going to work?
Just Dealer Inspire. So Dealer Inspire, for those that don't know, is a software business that I created back in 2013. And today it's arguably the number one market share provider of websites to automobile dealers in the United States. Over 7,000 car dealers use Dealer Inspire, and it's now owned by Cars.com, which is the biggest marketplace in the world for looking at cars online, essentially. When we told people that we were creating a website, they were like, you're going to get smoked. You have no chance. And in some ways, they were right because on paper, we were competing with literally companies that were over $1 billion in market cap, publicly traded companies with unlimited resources. And it was me and like 3 people. So we had this huge like disadvantage on paper, but we had a crazy advantage that I saw that was very, very clear to me. And the intent of building that actually wasn't to build this crazy company. Of course, you have these aspirations, but it was actually to take care of the marketing clients from the other company that I created. So I created a company called Launch Digital Marketing, and we were providing services to drive website traffic for car dealers. So we would do things in Google and at the time, like organic, social, and we would drive all this traffic to dealers' websites, and they just weren't sufficient. They didn't have tracking on them. The UX was bad. Like there was all these issues with these websites. So we were like, to be a viable marketing company, we needed to take control of the website. So that was kind of the why behind it. But then once we started to get into it and tried to think about the problem we're trying to solve that's different, which at the time was attribution, meaning car dealers, like many businesses, they want to understand how their marketing efforts are being received and
Sure,
what's the
totally.
ROI is.
Exactly. Yeah.
And there's no way to do that.
Yeah.
And I created a patent because I figured out a way to do it. And that had to do with I needed to have the form on the website to be able to track it in the way I knew that could be tracked. But it was very unorthodox thinking. And even today, like e-commerce platforms are just starting to do it. And this isn't like I'm a genius for figuring this out. This was like, no, I was just trying to solve a problem. And I figured out the very basic technical solution to solve it that no one had at that point. That combined with understanding the psychology of car dealers and what would make them choose our platform over someone else. And I happen to have like a history working in the auto business. So I just like looked at all those things and I was like, we have a huge advantage.
Yeah.
The other thing, when you get big, you have what's called code debt. So you have like
Code debt.
So you have like this debt of like code that's being deprecated every day. Think about it as like when you launch a software, it's a plane that's going up in the air, right? If that plane's in the air, you can't just like land it and then decide to like rebuild it or switch out a plane. You got to like fix it while it's in the air.
Yeah.
And that's the way software is. And that's what all our competitors were facing, these significant technical challenges, to the point where when we got into it, our infrastructure was such that everything was in the cloud. And this was at the time when that was starting to become acceptable. 3 years prior to that, putting stuff in the cloud was like dangerous. Like security experts were like, you guys are crazy. And we're like,
it's the Uber.
we never had an infrastructure.
Yeah.
People come in our office and they're like, oh, where's your servers? And I'm like, we have a router. And I would take them to the IT closet because they wouldn't believe me. We had a modem and we had access points, and that's all we had. To me, that drove me.
Yeah.
You know, I think that's not dissimilar to a lot of entrepreneurs out there. When I'm driven by spite, like I'm driven by someone saying, like, please tell me I can't do it, please, because it just like fuels me. And that's exactly what happened with Dealer Inspire, and very similar to Go Brewing. Now, Go is a little different in that I saw this window that was closing. We were entering a very, very competitive space at a time when the category was starting to grow quickly.
I see.
And I knew if we didn't get in quick enough and we didn't expand, we would lose an opportunity, because the non-alcoholic beers, they only have so much shelf space. It still represents a very small amount of the beverage industry. It gets a lot of attention because it's the fastest growing. You're talking about like it went from 0.5 to like 1%, right? So it's still very small. So it's not going to take up crazy shelf space. So these retailers are only going to pick a select few brands.
Yeah.
And once the market's saturated and these big players are in, to try to get in there and disrupt them, because now you're talking about a product and branding and things like that that don't have the same kind of unique IP that you can create and the leverage you can have in software, like I was talking about.
But as a category, there's probably ways in which NA is looking at opportunities that the big beverage alcohol companies are like, that'll never work.
Easy Man.
Yeah.
It's a great example of that.
Yeah.
We found this opportunity with Easy Man, which is our microdosed THC beverages, to make something that tastes like beer, but it has THC in it. No one really to date in a meaningful way had did that. And there's good reason for it. By happenstance, we figured out a way to do it. And now we launched a brand that I believe can disrupt alcohol in a major way. And it's a big bet, right? You're going against this huge industry. I don't think listen, alcohol isn't going away. It's about having options. It's about giving someone the opportunity to create a buzz that's less harmful for them long term. Yeah. And having a THC infused beverage, for me and for many people, is a lot better for you than alcohol. It helps you sleep better, doesn't have the side effects of the hangover in the morning, and you're going to get a better workout. Your resting heart rate's going to be better at night, and a myriad of other positive things. So because of those reasons, I'm very bullish about that category.
Well, next time I have an Easy Man or Go Beer, I'm going to toast Cliff Young. He's the original
I
Easy
give him all
Man.
the credit. Yeah.
That's awesome. Good story.